headquarters building in downtown, if you've seen it, it's a gorgeous building, the Parker Center. On the commercial side, we're designing the block project in downtown Los Angeles. It's an entire block in downtown which currently has the Macy's store in it. That entire block is being redesigned and going to be reconstructed. We're also designing several expansions to Westfield malls in different locations in Southern California. And lastly, we're also designing new projects for a confidential entertainment company. And I can say this, that this confidential company is the largest in the world, and they have parks in Anaheim and in Florida. We're also experts in sustainability and energy efficiency assessment and design, LEED certification, as well as in developing emergency preparedness plans for property owners and users. In addition, we're highly experienced in design build, as well as in innovative delivery systems such as P3 and IPD. Second, why do we like Pasadena? I would like to invite every one of you to come to my office. If you do, I don't think I need to say more. Where else in Southern California can you look at the San Gabriel Mountains rising above lush green trees? Pasadena is uniquely beautiful. Pasadena is the hub of technology and research. It is the home for top engineering companies in the world. It has Caltech, it has JPL, and a large number of high-tech research and development companies. Pasadena is a technology corridor. Also, we appreciate the fact that the city is supportive of its own when it has opportunities for engineering services. Also, we appreciate the prompt support of the Chamber of Commerce. Several months ago, we had executives of a major hospital in Saudi Arabia visiting our offices. And Paul Little, the chamber president, came to our office and gave his endorsement. We will be working for that client in January. Also, if you live in Pasadena, you can get to your office in 10 minutes without getting on the freeway. And obviously, I like that. I've lived here for 40 years. And lastly, where else can you find the Rose Bowl and the parade? Some business outlook from a lower level from where Bill Allen addressed us. Business grows where there is money. Therefore, we will not see much from the federal government for a while, except in areas related to care of veterans. It is encouraging to see that the state of California is in the black, and we're hoping to see some of that money starting to flow to local cities. Looking at a few markets, in education, community colleges do not have much money left in their bond accounts or in their projects, so they will be mostly in closeout mode for a while. There will be some energy upgrades due to Prop 39 funds. LAUSD has bond money. We will restart seeing campus upgrades in the second quarter of 2014. These upgrades will focus on energy and technology projects. Healthcare is geared to make a big push towards building medical office buildings when the uncertainties around the Affordable Care Act are cleared. Unfortunately, the when seems to continue to slip. We're seeing and will continue to see the start of major developments in the entertainment industry. Universal and Disney appear to be the leaders. Transportation projects will continue to create jobs, and we will see significant emphasis, and we continue to see this in energy, and we will continue to see growth in that sector as well. I believe most opportunities in the near and the medium terms will be created by the private sector in areas where the demand is rising. Commercial and multi-unit residential are on the rise. Even in the public sector, opportunities will come about with the participation of the private sector through P3, public-private partnerships. I will close by naming a few familiar items which seem to be on the path to extinction in a decade or two. The landline telephone, the newspaper, the check, the post office, and your privacy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Dr. Michael Giardello. Dr. Giardello is a co-founder of Materia and serves as president, CEO, and CTO. After completing his PhD in 1993 at Northwestern University, Dr. Giardello was a postdoctorate fellow with Professor Grubbs at California Institute of Technology until 1995. He then worked with several startups, MaxStem, Advanced Polymer Technologies, Cyrano Sciences, and others, until co-founding Materia in January 1998. Dr. Giardello served as Executive Vice President and CTO until February of 1999, when he became President and CEO. Dr. Giardello is a co-author of numerous publications and patents in the area of catalysts and materials, and serves as a director for Materia, the Caltech Student Investment Fund, and serves on the advisory board of the Pasadena Bioscience Collaborative. He is the co-founder and co-chair of Innovate Pasadena. Dr. Giardello.
Well, first I'd like to thank you for inviting me to speak today. It's been a great opportunity to talk about our company and some of the activities that we've been involved with Innovate Pasadena. Excuse me, getting a little cold these days. So I came to Pasadena about 20 years ago, and the reason was to be a part of Caltech and to work with a great research leader there, Professor Grubbs at the time. And we had a lot of activity going on in the laboratory and a lot of technology development. And I got the opportunity to work on a program that was, I thought, very innovative and had a lot of opportunity for growth and could really, change the world. And even though it was very important technology, it was still very young, and there wasn't a lot of opportunity to have any commercial activity at that time. And so after finishing that, I worked in a number of different startups until the technology matured more. But one of the things that was pretty obvious in working with those different startup companies, that it was a challenging environment in the area, in the sense that there wasn't a lot of venture capital in this area, so a lot of investors weren't either coming to Pasadena or interested in investing in companies in Pasadena. One of the first startups I worked in, I was in some ways fortunate that the investors were not from this area, because they relied on management that much more to do things, and so I got to have a lot of free reign in sort of the operations of the company. And then with other companies, we had issues with recruiting. There was a perception that the ecosystem here wasn't developed enough, and that it was challenging to get management from companies, because in startups, typically, you might have a position for 3 or 4 or 5 years, and for whatever reason, if the startup goes away or you move on, you need to have some place to go to. And if there's not enough companies around, you're kind of stranded, and if you don't have a good network, you might not find another job. So there was a lot of perception, and it wasn't, I wouldn't say it was all founded, but some of it was reasonably based. And over time, I got involved with different groups, if you will, to try and help change that, both perception and the reality of the situation. And so early on, after founding the company and doing some other things, got involved with a nonprofit group here called Pasadena Entretech. It was a group that was put together between Caltech and the city of Pasadena, and it was really focused on trying to sort of jumpstart that ecosystem and get a critical mass going, where you had talented people that could work in the companies, as well as the workforce and investors and a number of other things in this more local area. That was going well for several years. We sort of modified our scope over time, but what really affected us was the downturn in 2008 and 2009. It was almost impossible to raise funds for nonprofit groups, and we had a paid executive director, a very talented individual, but it was very, very difficult to raise funds. And so I was the chairman of the group at that time. We sort of idled the organization from a operational point of view, but kept it alive. And that sort of led to Innovate Pasadena, which we came together, both Andy Wilson and I, last year, looking at possibilities of repurposing the organization and starting a sort of a clean slate, if you will, and rebranding. And we had a very successful launched this past June, and we had about 700 people sign up for it and about 500 people attend. It was right here in Old Town Pasadena. We had great stakeholders involved, so Caltech, Art Center, City of Pasadena were all involved in the organization, been very supportive. And that's one thing that I found very different about Pasadena compared to other places that I've been, is that the city has been very, very supportive, and it's very easy to get access to everybody from the mayor to economic development to building and planning. It's not sort of a black box where you just send some paperwork in and hope for the best. And in what the company that we started, Materia, there's a lot of things that we have to do that are very challenging. We're a specialty chemical company, and so the idea of starting a specialty chemical company in California by itself is challenging, but being a very small company and having limited resources, you really can't navigate all of the local and more importantly the state and the federal guidelines and getting things going. So having the city being very supportive of that has made everything possible today. We have about 100 employees, maybe about 95 or so that are permanently here in Pasadena. There are a number of people that move around. We have another facility in Texas, which is about 15 to 20 people, depending on the time of year. And it's a pretty skilled workforce. So out of the, let's say, 95 to 100 people that are permanently here, the average salary is probably about $80,000 a year. So it's a pretty significant economic driver in this area. So one of the things that I wanted to try and leverage off of was the presence of a number of different companies that are close by to us, and really try to increase the critical mass that's here to get over that hump of being able to have a self-sustaining ecosystem in technology companies, and I would say in general just high-tech companies or high-growth companies. And Innovate Pasadena was really the goal of that. And so we've been able to bring together, as I mentioned, the key stakeholders in that organization, and we've had a number of programs since our launch. We've had about 5 or 6 different programs now. Some are on a weekly basis, some are on a monthly basis, and we'll continue to roll those out as we go forward. We've had tremendous interest from a number of different people to be involved in the organization. The important thing is, up until about, and I can say this truthfully, up to about a week and a half ago, it was a completely volunteer organization, so there was no paid staff whatsoever. So it was asking a lot of people to put in time. And about a week and a half ago, we hired our first part-time administrator to help out a little bit, because we all have day jobs, and those long days get a little tiring after a while. And it's been a great opportunity to bring things together. I also had the opportunity to work with a number of talented individuals on the Economic Development Task Force for the city, and one of the things we identified there was innovation and supporting innovation, and I think IP really, or that's what we call Innovate Pasadena, is really goes towards that and supporting the innovative companies that are in the area, as well as the entrepreneurs that want to be involved in innovative companies. So groups like Idea Lab, the new design accelerator between Caltech and the Art Center, all those things go very well towards our overall mission of growing high-tech jobs and growing the cluster here. So a little bit about our company. It's hard to describe what we do. If you remember a couple of decades ago, BASF had a commercial that said, we don't make a lot of the products that you use, but we make a lot of the products that you have or use better. And sort of we do the same thing. We lie behind a lot of the products that are out there in the marketplace today. Our brand isn't very strong because we're a small company amongst many $100 billion companies out there in the chemical industry. But we sell to all the major chemical and materials companies. We've had major breakthroughs in oil and gas, pharmaceuticals. The first commercial drug using our technology was just launched about 3 weeks ago in Japan from Johnson & Johnson. It's the first protein-like drug to treat hepatitis C. Could be a huge opportunity over the next several years. That drug alone was probably, down the hall from me in 1994 when I was at Caltech, there was the postdoc that was working on the proof of concept of that whole technology. So from 1994 till 2013, that's how long it takes sometimes to bring a drug to market. So there were several companies that had tried to make drugs with, along that way, and they fell out of, clinical trials in phase 2 or phase 3. But this is the first drug now that's been commercial with our technology that just launched a couple weeks ago in Japan, and then hopefully next year in the US and in Europe. If you drive a car that's less than 6 years old, which I guess from the statistics might not be a very good statistic to think about, but if your car is less than 6 years old, there's a lot of things under the hood that are made using our technology. The seals and gaskets and things like that the hoses and the gaskets and the high temperature sealants are made. A lot of that is made with our technology that we produce right here in Pasadena. So another example that I'd like to give of the differences between sort of local and state and federal government and how do you interact with them. So in I'd say 2009, 2010, we're looking at expanding our catalyst manufacturing facility. And in doing so, we're going to go over a certain level of manufacturing, which you then have to get special permits from the AQMD and things like that. And you know, for us, it was a very difficult experience. It took us over a year, maybe 14 months. We used outside consultants. We spent a lot of time and money getting this AQMD permit. And when we had everything completed and we used an engineering firm for installing the equipment and all that, the final plans, when we went to the city of Pasadena, we were able to get the permit to construct what we did in about a week. So it was a huge difference in just how you go about doing business between the state bureaucracy and the local government, which was, you know, very, very helpful to us in getting what we needed to get done. We continue to work in a number of different areas. Energy is a big driving force for us. We work with energy companies all over the world. We're in the Gulf of Mexico. We participate in horizontal drilling throughout the United States. So you've heard a lot about the natural gas revolution in the U.S. Our technology goes into that activity. Natural gas prices in the U.S. are maybe a third of that in Europe and a fifth of that in Japan. So it's a huge opportunity. I've read articles that talk about if we want to solve the global CO2 problem, the best thing that the U.S. can do is to teach China how to frack. They have larger shale reserves than the U.S. does, but they don't have the infrastructure, they don't have the water, they don't have a lot of the things necessary to bring that, to bring those shale reserves online to generate natural gas and oil. And so we're working with companies that are looking at doing that over the next decade or so. So there are a lot of global trends that we try to align ourselves with. The energy is a big area. So whether it's in oil and gas or in wind, we participate in both of those markets. And then a number of other areas in specialty chemicals that probably don't mean a whole lot to a lot of people in the audience, but chemistry sort of touches you everywhere from working with a major, one of the larger consumer products companies in the world, and they're working on a new detergent using our technology, and it could really revolutionize energy consumption and how you go about allocating energy for simply washing clothes. About 80% of the energy goes into heating the water, so if you can increase the detergency in cold water, that can save a huge amount of energy on a US basis, but also on a global basis. So we participate in many different things, and we've had the opportunity to work with just some of the best and talented people in the world. We've been able to recruit now from all over internationally. We brought in a banker last year from London. One trip to Pasadena was all he needed to see that this was a great place to be. And the combination of, let's say, Caltech, the Art Center, JPL, all the arts and culture here, the quality of life, obviously the weather, just tremendous assets. And Innovate Pasadena is really trying to bring that asset base together to really showcase what we have here and how we can leverage that to increase economic prosperity for everybody. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Doctor. Our next panelist is Mr. Ken Wee. He is the owner and manager of a group of companies commonly known as the Singpoli Group, an association of independent companies that specialize in real estate investment and development. Mr. Hui and Singpoli Group are also co-owners and managing partners of 2 North Lake Tower, a Class A multi-story office tower in Pasadena. Mr. Hui is engaged with many nonprofit organizations in Southern California, such as the American Cancer Society, Pasadena City College, and Caltech Associates. He is the founder of the Ken Hui Charity Foundation, Inc., a nonprofit corporation devoted to supporting orphanages and charities around the world that benefit disadvantaged children. In December 2012, Mr. Hui was honored by the Boy Scouts of America with the Distinguished Citizen Award. Spearheaded by Mr. Hui, Singpoli Group has begun supporting the Pasadena Symphony in 2012, and the company will be sponsoring its very first float in the Rose Parade, the 125th Rose Parade that'll take place on January 1st, 2014. Mr. Hui holds a California General Contractor license and obtained his Bachelor of Science degree from Woodbury University. He and his wife, Ivy, reside in Arcadia and have 4 children, Winnie, Kelly, Ronald, and Brianna. Ken Hui, thank you.
Good afternoon. Well, St. Pauli consists of architect firm, construction company, investment firm, property management, and all those. But however, our main business really focus in real estate, commercial real estate. And our projects in Pasadena at this time is right on the lake in Colorado. We are renovating a boutique hotel right on the Mentor and Colorado. And at the same time, we are also just invest into a project in Marina del Rey. It's another 5-story hotel project. It's Marriott right next to the water. And we just joined our Beijing real estate investment fund, invest another project in New York, Manhattan. Inside of Manhattan is Beekman Street. It's a 44-story condos projects. I've been doing the commercial real estate for more than 20 years. And when I first graduated from college, I decided to stay here. I was a foreign student. And at that time, when I first graduated, at that time it was recessions. During the recession in 1991 and 1992. During that time, I looked at the opportunity. And at that time, there was a RTC, Resolution Trust Corporations. There's so many distressed property at that time. And at that time, when I looked around, I said, wow, the properties value is so low. How come the price is so low? And I think at that time, gave me an opportunity to learn how to improve those properties, how to reposition them, and how to make our profit during the bad time. I believe the real estate market, in every market, there will be a good time and bad time, no matter what country. And at that time, when I look at the market, I see opportunity came. That's why my first investor, in fact, it was my father. I called my father. I said, Dad, you need to come. This is such a great opportunity for me to invest. I want to stay here. I'm not coming back. And he said, are you sure? I said, yes. You got to fly in and see me, and you have to see the market at that time. So at that time, I was very fortunate to be able to purchase a couple good buildings, Class A building, and bought it at a very low price. And I repositioned them because I still remember when I first moved into those buildings, it was a vacant building. At that time, my wife and I walked into the building and say, hey, when we talk, there's an echo sound. Because it's so empty. But how are we going to improve? How are we going to reposition them? How are we going to make this become a good asset? It was our lessons. So during the first 10 years, I've been doing well, I think because of some luck also. And I was able to fill up all the properties with a pretty stable rent. And all the properties value has increased, and we make some profit. That's why for the last 10 years, I've been thinking about, hey, I need to work on some other bigger projects. How are we going to do that? We cannot just rely on our family fund, right? With family fund, you have limited resource. So at that time, I went to China. I went to Hong Kong, Taipei, Shanghai, Beijing. At that time, actually, it was a bad time in China too. In 2003, 2002, 2003, at that time, the projects, at that time, it was pretty cheap at that time too, in China. I said, that's the place I want to do something. And at that time, we have been working on a couple of good projects there and build up our relationships and syndicate projects. Globalization apply in trade, but I think globalization apply in real estate as well. Because why apply in trade? Because I think anywhere, if you can buy cheaper price of the goods, you'll purchase it. But United States today, I really think the value of the properties is way undervalued globally, way undervalued. I think if you compare to the Asia and the United States, the cap rate of return. Today, I think we are talking about between 6% to 8% that range. Actually, it's a very, very good return, because if you want to invest in China today, Hong Kong, Shanghai, you only have 2% rate of return. So what's that mean? That means, in my opinion, the bubble is there. We don't have bubble. We don't have any bubble. And our rental rate is very low compared to 2007. Of course, we dropped almost 30% to 40% from that point. So where's our bubble? I don't see, we are going to drop further. That's why during the 2007, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12, St. Pauli keep buying the properties during the last 5 years. Because we believe the market is already hit the bottom at that time. We don't think there will be too much risk for us. Of course, investment always has risk, but we look at the numbers, we look at the downside. It's just not going to be too much risk. That's why I invest during the 5 years, during last five years, with our partners, financial partners from Asia. And at this time, we're still looking for opportunity to buy, because we still believe the market value of the real estate is so low, so low. Money go to Asia, sometimes go to Europe. Europe, they have their own problem too. So I think the US market is a place we're looking for. So, especially when you look at the employment rate, Alan just show in the screen, is steadily improve. Our employment rate actually is steadily increasing, and unemployment rate is dropping. I think there is a good sign. This is a good sign. We are going to have a very, very stable market for the next few years. So in my opinion, interest rate, of course, I think is going to increase a couple more points during next 2 years, but it should be okay. I think that's a good sign, because I think we, US, has the best market in the world right now. Why we come to Pasadena? Because, number one, I think Pasadena, you have, from culture to high tech, you have for almost everything. High tech, you have 4 years college, you have a Caltech, or even Art Center. This is very, very, very good college. For the 2 years college, we have PCC. PCC, I have to say, this is one of the top community college in the country right now. I know. When we recruit our staff, I think when we recruit our team, we need good people. We need good people. And we always treat our staff as a team. I always tell my staff to work with me as a team member. Don't think you're a boss. I'm a boss, but at the same time, I want them to work with me as a team. I want them to be a boss too. That way, they will work much harder. So that's why I think Pasadena, from college, we have support. Education, we have very good support. From art, we have different museums. We have Pasadena Symphony. We have different art to really, we have a very strong culture. Very strong culture. And also, when I work with the city of Pasadena, I think the Pasadena City Hall, I work with so many staffs, and our team work with so many staffs. The good thing is they're looking for the interest of the people. It is true, because they're looking for how to improve the economy, how to make Pasadena become a good place. Because when I see this kind of commitment to the merchant or to the business people like me, I think this is the place I want to be. This is the place I think St. Pauli want to have route. So, again, I am very pleased to be here today in the afternoon. So, anyway, thank you so much.
Ken, thank you very much. Our fourth panelist is Mr. Andy Ogden, who is the chair of Graduate Industrial Design at Arts Center College of Design, formerly vice president and creative executive for Walt Disney Imagineering R&D, and an influential car designer for Honda Research of America. Mr. Ogden has been on the Arts Center faculty since 1984 and has helped train designers who hold leadership positions around the world. He has a strong record of innovation, award-winning design excellence and management with more than 20 years of professional R&D experience and market success in consumer products, transportation, entertainment, interactive media, and education. He is the principal inventor for 7 U.S. invention patents for immersive displays, human interface systems, robotics, and motion simulators. Mr. Ogden received his BS in Industrial Design with distinction from Arts Center College of Design in 1983, completed the Executive Management Program at UCLA Anderson School of Management in 2003, plus additional architecture studies at the University of Texas in Arlington. Mr. Ogden.
Good afternoon. It wasn't USC that time.
No, I know. We got that other school in there.
So, as was announced, I have the privilege of chairing the Graduate Industrial Design program up at Arts Center College of Design. And in that program, we're really dedicated to preparing individuals for professional success in meaningful careers. What we want to do is take creative minds and elevate them to be able to confidently create new value for companies that face rapid change and will need to constantly reinvent themselves in this rapidly changing world that we're in. And I really think that that's the environment, that's the background for everything that we're going to talk about in regard to education. Sorry. So when Paul Little invited me to talk about where I saw the future going in education, I took a look around and did a little bit of research. I have my own thoughts about that. It's obviously something we talk about often at Arts Center College of Design. And in the innovation education business, which is what I consider myself to be in, we're very interested in future trends. We study them all the time, and I can say confidently, we have no idea what's going to happen for sure. But there are a lot of people who think that some big changes are in store for higher education, and I share that point of view. So one of the things we'll do is we'll look at drivers of change. We'll go visit some of the favorite sources we have for people who are professional futurists who look at the future constantly and try to give us some good insight. I went to one of them, and there's a website you can go to called knowledgeworks.org, and there you'll see the 2025 vision that they've put together for the future of education. And professional futurists usually build these reports in such a manner that you have a kind of positive potential future and you have one that's a little bit more dark. And so in looking at their structure, this is the way that they see scenarios developing. In the future, there will be prosumers. They like to make contraction words too. Prosumers and providers of education. And in the sort of positive scenario, they anticipate something they call a vibrant learning grid. And that would be this interconnected network of learning, a culture of flexible innovation learners that shape their own learning experiences and employ learning agents, which would be pieces of software that basically help give us a personal coach to educate ourselves. And they draw upon a rich learning geography to identify resources that meet their needs. In that vision, you also have a national system for global competitiveness. And in this world, entrepreneurial providers would work together to highly specified standards to provide a rich national education system designed to ensure global competitiveness. Now, the more dire future sounds like this. Learners forage for resources. The same online learning that's anticipated is out there, but it's hard to find what's good and what's bad, and everyone will educate themselves. They'll employ some of those learning agents, but you're never sure if you have a good one. And schools will become centers of resilience. Somehow they will struggle as government-backed providers, and they'll control scarce resources to try and provide an equitable education to a diverse range of haves and have-nots. And I think all of these pictures of the future tend to be kind of extreme. And we'll get something that's a little bit different than all of those, but it paints an interesting picture of what might happen. In my own view, we try to take a look at what are the big drivers of change that are going to likely have a lot of influence. The big ones we've been talking about all afternoon are the changes in the economy that we saw as of about 2008. My point of view is based on secondary research. It's also anecdotal. But what I'm seeing over and over again is that the economic downturn created a situation in which there was a once-only opportunity for especially large corporations to cut their operating costs and their structure by 20% with impunity. And in that period of time, they were able to get a level of efficiency about the remaining people in their workforce, and they haven't replaced them since. So the people I know who are in those jobs are working really hard. They're a little bit stressed out, but it seems as though things are working pretty well. And that's created an interesting set of circumstances that really affects education. Without being able to pin it down, there are lots of people who believe that 1/3 of the US workforce is on contract now. So when we talk about job recovery, that's one thing, but we have to start to picture that these are people who don't have a traditional staff position and the benefits that go with it. So the needs are very different, and people who are getting out of college are entering a workforce that's a different kind of an environment than it was in the past. Another thing that's a big impact on education is college is expensive. When all those companies cut their operating structure by 20%, higher education did not. And so that means that they're a little bit out of phase, and the cost of education, as we all know, is very high. I like to say that makes my job harder and harder and harder. We have to make sure we deliver an education that will give people breadth and ability to find meaning in life, but we also have to make sure that they get out there and we haven't put too many bricks in their backpack to send them out to be successful. And it's harder for students to get loans. It's just gotten a lot more difficult since that economic downturn. That has some impacts on who we see as students in the school. Students who study in one place and then shift to another location are sometimes finding it hard to get enough money to finish their education. And the customer for that education has shifted a bit. It used to be it was much more of a student decision. Now we find that the parents are much, much more involved in making decisions about where their kids are going to go to school. And they're looking a lot more closely at the ROI. Right? What's the return on investment? Education at one point was considered to be a way of broadening one's horizons and building the basis of a meaningful life with a broad liberal arts education. There's a shift now to place a lot more emphasis on making sure that that results in employment. And I'm not intending to say I have a judgment on that one way or another, but we live in a world now where you have to be very sensitive to the idea of what it is that your customer or students want. We're also seeing that undergraduate fields are oversupplying the markets with certain number of graduates, and that's led to a lot of need to distinguish oneself by getting a graduate education in order to be able to get viable employability in those fields. So there's a great deal of growth in graduate programs. Graduate programs are becoming very specialized and fragmented, and universities are expanding there where they're finding a drop in enrollment in some of the undergraduate areas. And research funding in graduate universities is pressured as well. Traditional sources are reducing their funding. A lot of that came from government funding via military as well as other areas. And we're just not seeing that anymore. So colleges are motivated to develop new revenue streams. They're encouraging more entrepreneurial exploitation of IP and ideas that are developed in the institution by students, by faculty. And they're looking for new ways to participate in the potential revenues that come from that. We are all, of course, involved in our own design accelerator with Caltech right now. Quality versus quantity becomes an important issue for the college. Obviously, colleges don't want to downsize. Nobody wants to lay off their friends, and no one wants to do less than they imagined they could do. So looking for the best students with the pressure to maintain enrollment ends up that sometimes you have to change your quality formula and look for the students who can afford to attend, because that's becoming a lot more difficult. And one of the things that I think we're seeing across all colleges, not necessarily the one I work for or other colleges in this city, but across the sort of college field, we're seeing a lot more international students, because that really is broadening the pool of where you can find students who can afford that higher education. We're also seeing that students are really interested in studying where they want to work. Making the commitment to come and study someplace is a bigger decision about where you'll try to start your career. And that's a really, I think, great thing for Pasadena and Southern California, because the good news is Southern California has a really strong creative economy. I work at an art and design school, and that school helps prepare people for some of the really great jobs that are out in this area and unique to this part of the world. We're very strong in that regard. And Southern California has a history as a center of innovation that goes from aerospace to so many other industries. So that culture of innovation is very attractive to young artists and designers. And then finally, we're really known as the Western gateway to the Pacific Rim and all the industries in it. And I think those are really great things that point to a strong future. Digital revolution and rapid change is really what's driving everything. And I think what we're seeing is ever increasing. The rate of change for any enterprise is becoming a shorter interval. So whatever your business model was and however it was working a couple of years ago, we typically talk to companies, and what we're finding is we're not really understanding how that's going to work going forward. We really need to reinvent ourselves. So preparing people for that is essential, and you hear a lot of talk about lifelong learning. Lifelong learning, we're all continually trying to re-educate ourselves. We're doing it in simple ways. We're doing it in informal ways because we can find information online. If you haven't gone to the Khan Academy online and see what's going on there, you should. If you want to get a quick seminar on almost any topic, it's mind-boggling what's available there, and it's free. So we're also seeing more and more institutions create MOOCs or online webinars. That seems to be more of a way of making people aware that their program exists and it's of high quality than an alternative to getting an education. And if we kind of take a look at the sort of fear discussion that happens in higher education, the notion is everybody's going to be out of a job at universities because everyone's going to go get an education online. And I don't really think that that's likely to be the case. Instead, I would say there's an amazing opportunity for really high-quality institutions to have their brand become ever more important. Because if you ask the question, when everybody can get an online education, what is it that distinguishes one education from another? Everyone's shorter on time. The people who want to employ smart people don't have time to go search for it themselves. They want to go to a brand that has already guaranteed that it's going to create satisfying employees for them. But it is going to definitely change what happens, I think, inside the classroom. The idea of spending that time with rote memorization becomes ridiculous. You can do that online. And that's great, but what it means is it's going to change what happens in that classroom. And the interaction of human beings and the qualitative things that can only happen in that situation, I think, will become the distinguishing factor of great institutions of education. And so colleges, universities have an opportunity to make some smart decisions, and I think their brands can end up being really strong and very important. As far as that, finally, then I would say we need to teach people to work well in teams. That's one of the things that seems to be super important. And there's a lot of concern about students these days being kind of isolated in all this online experience. I have a 13-year-old son, and if you looked at what he's doing in his room every evening from about 20 feet away, you would swear there's going to be a really big problem, and he's never going to know how to socialize or interact with other human beings because he's not doing that. But in fact, that's not what's going on. If you get a little bit closer, I've had this experience several times, he's doing something that is so amazingly different than what I would do, is he's got Skype on constantly. He's always with his friends. I would think about deciding to make a Skype call. I would negotiate some time and put it on the calendar and go Skype someone. You would ask if someone else could Skype with you. That's the culture that I come from. My son just has it on all the time. And he's together, he's kind of hanging out with his friends, and they do their homework together. They just listen to each other sneeze or shuffle papers around, but it's on. And I think this idea of people not being adept at socializing needs some rethinking. But I do think it's going to be very important for individuals to learn how to socialize and work together. That can only happen when you bring them to a common place. You can have really good online experiences after you've established a relationship, but you can't do it very well by establishing them through that. So I think that's going to become a really important thing. We also need to teach people to learn in terms of projects. It's one of the things we think is very strong about the experience that we're creating right now up at Art Center. We're aware of the fact that if you learn how to do things in terms of projects, you can continuously face something that you know absolutely nothing about. And there's a toolkit that helps you figure out how to do it. So that's going to be really important. And then the other thing we need to do is help prepare these individuals to reinvent themselves, the companies that they're part of, and the communities that they're a part of, because the change is going to continue and continue. Thank you very much.
Andy, thank you very much. Appreciate it. And again, thank all of you for being here and presenting to, and Bill. Thank you both for being here today. We certainly appreciate this. Well, again, thank you all for coming today. I think this was extremely informative, and I hope you all enjoyed it. Thank you.
Wow, now that was a business and economic summit worth attending. Lots of great information, and I hope you were taking notes, but we will be rebroadcasting this several times on KPAS TV. I'm William Boyer for the City of Pasadena. Thanks for watching KPAS, your news and information station for the City of Pasadena.